Hello everyone, welcome to Dice on Ice. My name is Megan, and in today's video, I will be giving you guys a possible character that you can play in your next campaign. This character is named the Wasp Witch, and she is a Warlock. This video will include her backstory, how to play her, and how to set her up as a character, and what kind of spells and other abilities to choose for her. And so, I hope you enjoy hearing the story about Lysona Davangard. The story of the Wasp Witch begins in a small, remote village, far from any of the large cities to the east. She was once a fair human woman named Lysona Davangard, who was the village healer and priestess after her elderly mother passed away. These two were the only ones in the village blessed with the power of magic, which they used to heal the townspeople and offer them aid in times of need. As taught by her mother, Lysona was a faithful servant of Sylvanas, the god of nature and light, and pledged her life to serving both the village and her patron god equally and favorably. Though a loner by choice, she was beloved by the people in her village. She healed many wounded and ill and helped the labors of expectant mothers. However, on one fateful night, a pale hooded rider rode into the village on a midnight black horse. Road-weary and injured, Lysona tended to this visitor for the night. By morning he was gone, leaving not a trace. Over the following months, the village grew ill with a fierce illness that not even Lysona's best efforts could stymie. Tensions began to rise as mentions of the pale rider surfaced. Soon, the entire village was poised against Lysona, claiming her to be bewitched by that devil who rode in the night before. The village cursed by Lysona's hospitality. She was put to blame for inviting this suffering, and so she was abducted in her sleep and brought to a patch of land outside the village. Everyone from the village, those who she once regarded as friends, were waiting, standing beside an open grave. Without so much as a trial, Lysona was forced into a wooden coffin, and then the villagers buried her alive. While inside the coffin, in pitch-black darkness, she screamed, cried, and begged to be let out. She felt a stirring as hundreds of wasps poured out of several nests that had been placed in the coffin alongside her. The wasps began to sting her, causing her to cry out louder, scraping at the coffin lid in desperate means to escape. She prayed to Sylvanas, pleading with him to save her, to show her mercy after years of pious worship. She was met with only silence. With the pain from the stings and bites and the lack of air, Lysona was certain this was her end. Her vision began to blur and her breaths were short, ragged gasps. As she struggled to keep conscious from all the pain, she heard a whisper in the wasp's buzzings. These whispers told her of an ancient god lost to time and memory, a god that would be able to help her, free her, and give her life. She only needed to swear herself to him, to serve him instead of Sylvanas. In desperation, Lysona agreed to this deal, and at once the wasp flew into her mouth, her nose, her ears, and she began to transform. She could feel a newfound power flowing within her, and with an explosion of pain and rage, she burst out of the coffin and the packed soil. She released flies, gnats, wasps, and locusts on the shocked townspeople, killing them all. She burned down the village in tribute to her new patron. In front of the flames, she vowed to avenge any who were lied to, falsely accused, and tormented for something they had not done. It was not known to her that this new god she worships is not a deity at all, but Beelzebul, lord of the flies, an archdevil from the 9 hells. He had tricked her, gained her soul, and would work to turn her from the light. Though her intentions seemed righteous initially, Lasona has begun to lose slivers of her humanity and has adopted a black and white view of the world. She deemed herself judge, jury, and executioner. Now she wanders the land, bringing vengeance to tormentors and coming to the aid of the downtrodden and the wrongfully damned. The following are simply suggestions for role-playing the Wasp Witch, possible bonds, traits, flaws, and how her story arc may play out. With the Wasp Witch's troubled past, it's easy to see a dark future for her. However, with the help of her fellow characters and her adventures, she may have a redeeming path ahead of her. After burning down her village, the Wasp Witch will set her sights on finding the mysterious Pale Rider, who she blamed with starting the sickness in her village. This will lead her to wander the countryside and have possible tie-ins to other characters in the party. She strongly believes that she will bring justice to those who are wrongfully accused, but because of her fiendish influence, she grows a very black and white view of the world and judges others harshly and violently. She leaves little time for conversation, often making a decision very quickly and acting out upon it. It will take the kindness and compassion of others to show her that the world isn't black and white, that what was done was horrible to her, but shouldn't be used as the measure for every other situation. She also may encourage others to follow this mysterious god, which means more soul fodder for Beelzebul. However, she genuinely believes this god saved her when all others turned their back on her. That being said, she has a hatred and disdain for Sylvanus and any of his worshippers. She believes that he is an evil god, a god that tricks others into following him, but when they need him most, he doesn't help them. A possible revelation she may have during the campaign is that this god is in fact false and is actually Beelzebul. And that will be up to you to decide how she reacts to that news. Though I'm not a strong believer in alignment, I think it's an important guideline to help guide the actions of the Wasp Witch in possible sticky or gray situations. That being said, I think the Wasp Witch can vary anywhere from chaotic good to chaotic neutral based on how intensely you play her. And one of her quirks is that she has grown accustomed to having flies and other vermin around her, and as such, she is always crawling with bugs and will even absent-mindedly play with them to the possible horror of other PCs. Hello, we are back in the chair with the computer, with the high-tech thing we got going on here. And so now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the Wasp Witch and work on her mechanics and build a character sheet for her. Now here I'll be using D&D Beyond because it's awesome and it's a lot better than me trying to write stuff out and you having to read my horrible handwriting. And so let's begin. With the race, there are races that are probably better mechanically for a Warlock, but in the Wasp Witch's case, she has a very unique beginning in that she already had magical powers before she made the pact with this god. And with that, the only way we can do that mechanically here is to make her a variant human with a feat. And so that is what we are going to do. Here, human, variant human. Languages, we're going to choose Sylvan because she worshipped Sylvanus, and I think that makes sense. And her ability scores is going to be in Charisma and not intelligence, Dexterity. In skills, she's going to have been skilled in medicine as a healer, and her feat is going to be Magic Initiate. We're going to use the Cleric. This is going to open her up to be able to choose some really awesome healing spells. And so, if you do have a healer in the party, she can provide some assistance. The one cantrip is going to be Light, and the second cantrip is going to be Spare the Dying. Her first level spell is going to be Cure Wounds. And that's it for Variant Human, and we can move on to class. And I'm sure you guys have already guessed it, because you guys are smart. She is a Warlock. She made a pact. She got powers from it. That is classic Warlock. So I'm going to bump this up to level 10 so I can show you guys some of the choices that you need to make to build her from level 1 to level 10. First things first, proficiencies. Arcana and Nature, I think, work best for her. And of course, her otherworldly patron, since she actually made a deal not with a god like she thought, but Beelzebul, a fiend, an archdevil. This is going to be, the fiend is her otherworldly patron. And the next thing is going to be Eldritch Invocations. The first one is going to be Beast Speech. I can imagine that because she is able to control and kind of flavor all of these pests and insects, that she is going to be able to speak to them at some level. The second one, also at level 2, is going to be Fiendish Vigor. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that she has to know where this vigor is coming from. If she doesn't know during this time that Beelzebul is actually her patron, if you want to kind of keep that hidden for a while, the Fiendish Vigor, she thinks, comes from her god. And so you can flavor that as all of these insects kind of flock to her, and she can eat them, as gross as that is, but all these little life forces can contribute to the life that she gains. Her level 5 option is going to be Cloak of Flies, which I think is just the coolest thing. There's a couple of different things that we're going to give her, including spells and these Eldritch Invocations, that are just perfect flavor-wise for the Wasp Witch. And this Cloak of Flies is not only good thematically, but it also keeps people away from her. And if you're some sort of magic user, you tend not to get too close to people during combat, and so this just furthers your ability to keep people away from you. And the 7th level option is going to be Sign of Ill Omen. Now, I imagine the Wasp Witch is going to have very visceral magic, in that it's going to be not as obvious, but very powerful and kind of ancient in that sense. And so, Sign of Ill Omen, you can just hex people, and hex is a very, very interesting spell. Now, her last option at level 9, I thought it would be very interesting to watch her as she gains more control over these insects and other vermin that she is able to control. At some point, she is actually able to turn into one of these things. That's how affected she is. That is going to be the Sculptor of Flesh, which will allow her to cast Polymorph. The Pact boon, I kind of went back and forth with, but I think Pact of the Chain works best. I think it'd be very interesting to have her have this little companion with her, and you can roleplay that as maybe this is when she finds out that Beelzebul is her patron, or maybe she still doesn't know, and you can flavor this little familiar accordingly to what she believes. Ability scores for both level 4 and level 8, you're going to want to just dump that into Charisma, make her spells as strong as possible. So then after that, we can look at the spells that she is going to be able to take. So first level, she gets 2 cantrips and 2 first level spells. Now, when I was choosing these spells, I had 2 ideas in mind. First is that anything to do with insects, blight, sickness, anything like that, she is going to be able to manipulate and have power. And I wanted the spells to be able to be flavored along those lines. The other thing that I thought was very important was the precedence of fire in her backstory. She set the village on fire, and so her more aggressive spells are going to be very fire-based. And it also makes sense since she is aligned with a fiend. Her 2 cantrips are going to be Create Bonfire and Infestation. Now, Infestation is part of the Xanathar's spell list, and it is just absolutely perfect. Being able to control a cloud of mites and fleas to go and chase a creature is just very cool, and what the Wasp Witch is all about. Her 2 first level spells are going to be Hex and Cause Fear. For the 2nd level, she gets another first level spell, which is going to be Hellish Rebuke. This is going to ensure that anything that hits her she is going to be able to retaliate against that. Now for her 3rd level, she gets access to 2nd level spells, and I was debating between 2, and that was between Cloud of Daggers or Crown of Madness. Now Cloud of Daggers is super interesting if you are able to flavor it in that instead of daggers, they're hornets. They're these stinging hornets that do the same amount of damage. It's just a fluff thing. I know that some DMs don't really like you changing spells that much, and so if that's the case, or if you don't want to do that, then the other idea is Crown of Madness. Both, I think, have a lot of merit to them. Again, you are able to stay far away from the action, but still influence the enemies in a negative way. But because I think that Cloud of Daggers is a little bit more thematic, that is the one that I am going to choose. 4th level, she gets another cantrip, which this one I choose Poison Spray. Despite the fact that it's only 10 feet of range, I think that it's a really good thing if someone is up close and she needs to get away, but she still wants to do some damage, is to be able to have this cantrip. And it does quite a bit of damage with 1d12 poison, so it's not a bad spell to take. For her 2nd level spell, she is going to take Hold Person. And I just imagine this as like a bunch of flies and gnats and wasps coming out and surrounding this creature, so much so that they're literally unable to move. Level 5 is going to give you access to 3rd level spell, and in the same way of doing the range spell, I think that Stinking Cloud is going to be very good in combat, and that you basically make the people in the cloud miss a turn because it smells so bad, they're retching, and it gives your allies some time to do what they need to do. For the 6th level, the 3rd level spell is the spell that most people choose because it is so forceful and it does so much damage, and like I said, it fits into her fiery nature, and that of course is Fireball. Level 7 gives you access to 4th level spells, and your first 4th level spell is going to be Blight. Now, if the name itself isn't perfect, then you get to wash over a creature of your choice in this necromantic energy, and they just take so much damage. I just think it's so cool that you can target things and they just wither and die. For level 8, your second 4th level spell is going to be Dimension Door. When you're a warlock, when you're a spellcaster, you're going to want to keep away from the combat as much as possible, and Dimension Door will give you a chance to do that, to get away, to move somewhere else very quickly. Level 9 is going to open you up to 5th level spells, and for that we're going to choose Enervation. Not only does this do a ton of necrotic damage, but it allows you to heal up yourself. So if you don't have a healer in the party or they're far away, with some of these spells, Enervation, False, the Eldritch Invocation that you choose, you are able to get a little bit of life while still doing some damage to others. And level 10, you don't get any spells, you just get another cantrip, and I think that with level 10, she has a huge grasp of controlling these insects, and so she is able to do it at such a minute level that I thought that Mage Hand would be a very interesting cantrip for her. And so that's her spell. She has 4 cantrips and 10 known spells at level 10. Then we're just going to move to abilities, and we're going to use Point Buy. It's one of the most common things, and lets you have the most available customization. So for strength, that's going to be our dump stat. She is not very strong, but that's okay. Dexterity is important. I think that if you're a spellcaster, one of either strength or dexterity you have to be fairly good at for any weapons that you might use or any maneuvers that you try and do physically. Constitution, I put 12. Intelligence isn't really that important either. Wisdom, she is going to need a bit higher so that she's able to successfully do her cleric spells. And of course, charisma is going to be the highest because that is the spell she uses for her warlock spell casting. And for her background, she is going to be an alkalite. Since she was so pious and such a believer of Sylvanas, I think that makes sense. Languages, I'm not really sure. Whatever you think that she would need. If she's been living somewhere for a while, she might take on the language of the people. So just choose 2 languages that you think would be important. And then the rest is just fleshing out the details, and that is really dependent on how you want to roleplay her. And that is it. That is the Wasp Witch. I hope you were able to follow along very easily, and both the character sheet and a list of the spells that she should take at each level is going to be linked in the description below. And that is the Wasp Witch. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please remember to like and subscribe and comment below. If you're going to be playing the Wasp Witch, let me know how you're going to change it, what kind of flavor you are going to add to make the Wasp Witch unique. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.